In this session, we will talk about Thomas Kuhn, and the text you had to read about this author was from the newspaper The Guardian, and it was entitled "The Man Who Changed the Way the World Looks at Science." Why is Thomas Kuhn important as an introduction to this global history course? The main idea that I want you to grasp from Kuhn is the question of what is the truth. So what Kuhn does is he questions one of the most important organized attempts to answer this question, and that is science. Thomas Kuhn was a historian of science, and his work sort of takes away science's authority over the idea of truth. So I want to introduce the course with this concept because we will talk a lot about empires and how empires dominate a worldview for a certain amount of time, and how they dominate the idea of truth. So I like the concept of paradigm and of paradigm shift. That is what Kuhn proposes, and take it from the field of the history of science and take it to the field of politics, to understand how the worldview dominated by one empire will eventually change when there is a shift of global powers. So what Kuhn does is he questions a standard and very strong view of science as a steady and cumulative progress. Kuhn, on the other hand, he only sees discontinuities, and by this he's challenging a very powerful and entrenched philosophical assumption about how science works. And again, when you read Kuhn in the context of our class, try to take his concepts from the field of the history of science to the field of politics and relations of power between different empires or between different states. So what is important in Kuhn's thinking is that he proposes that there is no sense of progress in the field of science. He proposes the idea of a scientific revolution as an episode of, again, non-cumulative development, in which an older paradigm is replaced in whole or in part by a new one that is incompatible with it. So I've put here an arrow with a little figure climbing up to give this idea of progress that before Kuhn was the main notion of how science worked and about how scientific achievements were made. But it's also a way to tell the history of the world. You can have a sense that our civilizations, contemporary civilizations, are better than the ones that came before. That there is a sense of progress in the way humanity is leading its life. So if we take Kuhn's concepts from the field of science to the field of politics, we could have some tools to also to criticize this idea of history and of the development of different empires and different states. These are Kuhn's words in his Structure of Scientific Revolutions. He says that he considers paradigms as universally recognized scientific achievements that for a time provide model problems and solutions to the scientific community. So what is important about Kuhn's definition of a paradigm is this idea of this universal recognition. So a paradigm is, for a time being, a way to understand the world, or a definition of the truth because a big number of people believe in it. So that's the most important element of Kuhn's thinking. That's why he says they are universally recognized. So there's an idea of a contract between the members of a scientific community about what truth looks like. And this becomes a paradigm, and a paradigm poses questions and solves problems during a specific amount of time. But then comes a paradigm shift, and this is the most important element in Kuhn's thinking. So you have 5 steps in the process of scientific achievements. The first one is the establishment of a paradigm. So in order to establish a paradigm, we just saw that you need a model, you need a scientific community that is committed to this model or to this version of the truth. So once you have an established paradigm, then according to Kuhn, normal science will take place. So you will have a lapse of time where under this paradigm, people will interpret the data or their reality with this paradigm in their minds. And then the third phase is a phase of crisis for Kuhn. We will see a video shortly where you will understand visually what a crisis represents. For Kuhn, there is a crisis when too many observations do not fit into the paradigm. And first you have 1 or 2 observations that do not fit, and you just consider them as exceptions to the rule. But once you have too many of those, then there is a crisis. So you start questioning the paradigm, and you begin what Kuhn states as a scientific revolution. It's a moment when the crisis is too big to ignore. And the scientific revolution finally ends up with the establishment of a new paradigm. So we will see a short video about how all of this works for Kuhn.
One way to look at scientific progress is to see the world as a collection of facts represented by these pom-poms. We may observe these facts and add these observations to those we have already made. And so it appears that progress is a process of addition. However, the philosopher Thomas Kuhn argued that observations do not exist in a vacuum. Instead, they are contained within a theory. The theory is a story which explains the meaning or significance of the observations. The dominant theory in a discipline at any given time is called a paradigm, and the observations are placed within that paradigm. A problem occurs when observations are made that do not fit into the paradigm. A crisis is reached when too many of these new observations do not fit into the old paradigm. A new theory is then proposed. If this new theory contains the observations better than the old theory, a paradigm shift. The old theory is then destroyed. And replaced by the new theory. To Thomas Kuhn, scientific progress is as much about destruction, specifically the destruction of the old theory or paradigm, as it is about the addition of new observations. And even this new paradigm will only last until it suffers its own crisis.